what we want to just do is just have a conversation, just get to know each
Yeah.
other, but more so, I want to hear it from you, and then we just happen to have another member of the conversation. They're just
Yeah.
by camera, it's all good. But no, again, looking at everything, and I've got it here, and I may look down from time to time. I'm not checking my text messages.
It's
I am
okay.
technically, but it's the text from you. I won't be able to necessarily see. I can see us feedback here, but as you're talking about your kids and just the situation, I want to see them, especially pictures that you sent. Now, I have one quick question. In
Sure.
this picture here, who's that little one?
That's our child.
Okay, okay,
Um, so
okay.
yeah, it's really sad when you're both Sean and Danielle had two children each, and so they're growing up without their biological mom and dad. But
Yeah.
it's one of those things. My faith has come so far. I mean, I gave my heart to Christ when I was 16, and went through a lot. And I don't need to get into all of that, I don't think, but um, I lost my husband and my first child within 4 months. And when I tell you, my world completely, fell apart, that's kind of an understatement. I had walked with the Lord a long time, and I never imagined He would allow or something like that would ever happen to me. We just, I kind of lived in this little bubble of, I'm living for the Lord. I love the Lord. He's going to protect my family. I prayed prayers of protection. Um, and then John died of cancer.
Oh,
And 4 months later, my son Matthew, and of course I was still a complete wreck.
yeah.
I had just lost him. 4 months later, um, we lost our home. We lost everything because he, struggled with colon cancer and couldn't work. Was going through chemo and radiation, that whole thing. And our
Okay.
church literally took care of us for almost a year. And then
Wow.
we finally had to just let our house go because they couldn't continue to keep paying our mortgage. We couldn't sell it. And so, not only did I lose, my husband, my marriage, my home, everything, I mean, our entire world fell apart. And then 4 months later, I was awakened in the wee hours of the morning by my dad. I was living in an apartment. I had to move out of our home and was living in an apartment. And my dad had a key. My dad came over, literally woke me up and said, "You got to get up. Matt's dead." And I
Mm,
was like, "What are you talking about? Matt's dead."
mm,
And when he turned on the lights and, my eyes, I saw his eyes, I realized that, they were like blood colored and I could tell he had been crying. It was the truth. Like
yeah.
this really happened to me. And so, come to find out, Matt had um, gone out with his girlfriend and his girlfriend's uncle, um, and they were drinking. And then the girlfriend's uncle gave him some methadone, and his girlfriend told me, I don't know how many pills he took, Miss Pam, but he was really messed up. And I need to tell you this part because it helps tell you about Danielle. But Matt and his girlfriend went to my daughter Danielle's home
Mm-hmm.
the same night. He had been drinking and had taken the methadone. And my daughter later told me, Mom, he was so messed up. He couldn't talk. He couldn't stand up straight. I begged him, Matt, let me take you to the hospital. Like, you look like you're really messed up. And he told Danielle, no, I just need to go sleep it off. Well, he went to sleep, but he never woke up. He died in his sleep. And so that became the catalyst that the enemy used to thrust her on this road of addiction.
Mm-hmm.
And this, my kids were raised in a Christian home. They went to Christian school. Danielle went on missions trips. I never would have imagined that incident of losing her brother would cause her to start numbing the pain. But that's what she did. She started numbing it
Wow.
and became an addict. And so for over a decade, I watched her just struggle with addiction, and I saw how evil addiction is. I saw that it's a vice of the enemy that he
Yes.
uses to kill, steal, and destroy. That's what he's after.
That's right.
He's after souls. He's after families. Um, and so what happened was she was in and out of rehabs all of that time. But right before she died, she had been sober for 6 months. And I had picked her up on a Sunday from Target. She died on July the 3rd, so this would have been, July or the end of June. I picked her up and took her from the halfway house, took her to Target to get, her things that she needed. Um, and then the next day, when I didn't hear from her, the Lord just spoke to me, and I knew that she was using again. She had been sober 6 months, and when I texted her and called her, she didn't answer. So, and you know how, on a text, you can tell when people read your text.
Yeah.
She had, it would show red. So I knew she was reading my text, but she wasn't responding. So I knew in my spirit she was using. So I called her on Wednesday. I tried all day Monday and Tuesday. She kept ignoring me. So I called her Wednesday, or not called her. Well, I did actually. I called her and she didn't answer, but I texted her. I said, "Did you hear Adam died?" And so she immediately texted me back, "No, what happened?" And this was a friend of hers that had just died, overdosed on fentanyl.
Oh my.
And so um, I called her and she answered the phone because she wanted to find out about Adam, and I could tell she was using, and my heart just like it's the most painful thing to watch your child use something that is destroying them before your very eyes, and you're powerless.
Yeah.
You can beg, you can plead. I prayed for her. I would tell her about the Lord.
Yeah.
I knew God had the power to heal her.
Right.
And I knew that He was the only one that could, because I watched her go through all of these rehabs, in and out of hospitals and rehabs, and none of them ever did any lasting good.
Mm.
And so I begged her. I said, "Please let me come pick you up and take you to the hospital so you can detox." And she said, "No, I just need to sleep it off. I've been using meth for 3 days. I haven't slept. You can come pick me up tomorrow." Well, the next day I got her ex, who went and picked her up, called me and said, "Miss Pam, I'm really sorry. She asked me to do it, and when I gave it to her, she slipped off the bed, um, and I tried to, I did CPR, I tried to resuscitate her, called 911. So long story short, a drug dealer, um, the same one that she had bought meth from the last 3 days, ripped her off of one of the purchases, didn't give her what he was supposed to give her. So as a gift, he walked over, because he lived in the trailer behind where she was living. He walked over and gave her a gift of heroin.
Oh my.
But what she didn't know was laced with fentanyl. And so what happened was, EMS took her to the hospital, and she was, hooked up to life support for a day and a half. And that was just the Lord giving us time, me and her kids and our family, time to say goodbye. But He had already chosen to take her home. And I remember when I got home from the hospital, I fell on the floor, my prayer closet. I have a rug where I pray, and I didn't understand. But I had learned, when I lost John and Matt, because I was really angry at the Lord when I lost John and Matt. I didn't understand how He could have just stood there. Number one, He didn't heal John after churches were praying, hundreds and thousands of people, thousands of people were praying for them. And I didn't understand why He took Matt. But I had learned, Josh, through that season of just coming to terms, reading the book of Job, and really, really, pouring myself into trying to understand suffering and loss, and in God's word and His promises to His children. He never promised us that we wouldn't suffer. And I had this I describe it as, I had put God in this box of my own making, my own I had created a God that um, that would never allow anything bad to touch my life, that I would never suffer, I would never have any pain.
Mm.
Um, and that's really not the way of the true. But if you read the Old Testament and the New Testament, it gives us an accurate picture of who God is. And he does allow suffering, He does allow us to walk through pain. He never promised us that we wouldn't go through anything hard in life. And so when I lost Danielle, I remember falling on my knees saying, Lord, I don't understand. Isaiah 55, 8 through 9 says his ways, his thoughts are not our thoughts and his ways are not our
That's right.
ways.
That's right.
And so I just said, Lord, I don't understand. But I'm not gonna ask why, like I did when I lost Matt and John. I'm not gonna be angry at you. I trust that you know why. And he spoke to me. I heard him just as clear as you and I talking. I heard him say to me, I heard every prayer that you prayed and every prayer that she prayed. I captured every one of your tears and every one of her tears.
Mm.
I answered your prayers, just not in the way that you expected.
Wow.
I brought her home, and now she is her most beautiful self, and she's in perfect peace. Now you be in peace. And that's what he said to me.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord has always spoken to me through dreams. And I had a dream shortly thereafter after that, where in the dream I was, I was like standing in this field, and there was this little brook, and I saw my son Matthew approaching, from a distance, but I saw him, and I was just so shocked and so surprised, and I started running towards him, and he ran towards me, and we embraced, and he said, "Come on, Mom, I'm gonna take you to go see Danielle."
Mm.
And I was like, "What? Really? You're gonna take me to go see Danielle?" I was so excited, and I grabbed his hand, and we went through this lush grass and over this like little hill, and I saw my daughter, and we ran into each other's arms and embraced each other. And she said, "Mom, don't cry anymore. Like, I'm where I need to be, and I'm in the best place, and I'm happy. Don't cry anymore.
Mm.
I'm at peace." The Lord gave me that dream. And then her best friend, Deshay, texted me like 2 days later and said, "Miss Pam, I had a dream about Danielle. And in the dream, we were throwing a surprise birthday party for her. And you happened to come in a little late, and you came walking in, and there was Danielle, and y'all ran and y'all hugged each other." And Deshay said, "Miss Pam, I've never seen Danielle so beautiful. She was so happy, and she was at peace." So that was a dream confirming my dream. And so I was still, obviously, when you lose a child, there's nothing like it. People have asked me to even describe it. I'm like, I can't describe it.
Mm.
Like, I've lost a husband, I've lost my dad, I've lost my brother. I've had a lot of loss in my life. But when you lose a child, it's a different kind of a pain. And I think it's because we carry them in our, especially for women, we carry them in our womb. We nurse them on our breasts. We nurture them, and we pour everything into them.
Yeah.
So it's a different kind of pain. Yeah. So I can't describe it. But I was still in a lot of pain after I lost Danielle. Even though I knew she was free from addiction, I was just still hurting. And my son Sean was living with me at the time. And he was really struggling to understand why God had taken Danielle. We were sitting in our living room when we got home from her memorial service, and Sean was so angry. He was spearing questions at me, Josh, like I was a a dartboard or something.
Mm.
He was saying he was angry. He was like, "Why, Mom? Why does God hate us so much?
Mm.
Why does God keep taking our, our loved ones from us? Why did He take Dad? Why did He take Matt? Why did He take Danielle? I don't understand. Like, I don't want to serve a God if He's gonna be this hateful, this cruel." And he was crying. And I said, "Sean, I couldn't, Josh, I couldn't give him an explanation because I didn't have one. The whys behind why God has taken so many of our loved ones. All I could offer Sean was what God had just given me in prayer on my knees when he told me." So that's what I told him. I said, "Sean, God told me He answered our prayers. He answered our prayers for your dad to be free from cancer. I don't know why He took Matt, but obviously He's wiser than we are, and He took Danielle because that was what was best." And I said, "We don't understand. We're not going to be able to understand. We have to just trust Him, Sean. That's all we can do is trust Him."
That's it.
Sean was really, really upset, and I watched him pace around the house, literally pace around the house, angry. And he kept telling me he was going to find out who gave her the heroin. He was going to get to the. I kept saying no, because what happened was, he kept saying, "I'm going to figure out who gave her that stuff." And I kept saying, "No, you leave it alone.
Yeah.
Um, it's not for us to you don't mess with drug dealers. Like, you leave them alone."
Right. Yeah.
And so what happened was, the Lord gave me a dream, Josh. He speaks to me through dreams. He gave me a dream, and in my dream, I went downstairs into our kitchen, and I saw a snake that was crawling on the top of the stove. And in the dream, of course, I'm terrified of snakes. So, I see the snake, so I run upstairs and I bang on Sean's door. This is my dream. I bang on his door and I said, "Sean, there's a snake in the kitchen. I need you to come and kill it." Sean came out of my womb unafraid.
Hmm.
Like, this child has no fear in him. And so we went racing down the stairs, and Sean took a knife that was beside the stove and he chopped the snake up. And then he just darted back upstairs. And so I turned and I looked at the stove, and the snake was still moving. So I ran back upstairs and I banged on the door and I said, "Sean, you didn't kill the snake. It's still alive."
Hmm.
So Sean came back downstairs, following me down the stairs. But at the minute I stepped into the kitchen, I saw that there was a python the entire length of the counter on the counter in the kitchen. Well, Sean brushes past me, puts out his hand to grab the python, and in the dream I scream out, "No, don't touch it, Sean. It will kill you. You don't have all your armor on."
Wow.
And then I woke
Hmm.
up. I knew it was a prophetic dream. So I went running into Sean's room and I banged on the door. This is in real life, like, I'm awake now,
Mm-hmm.
but I know that this dream is from the Lord. And I bang on his door. He opens the door and I tell him, "Sean," I was crying, I was weeping. I told him in my dream, I said, "I don't know what you're messing with or who you're messing with or what you're doing. The Lord is showing me that you're messing with something evil.
Hmm.
And if you don't leave it alone, it's going to kill you."
Wow.
And he brushed it off and said, "Mom, there you go again. You always over spiritualize everything." I said, "No. The Lord has showed me that this dream is prophetic." And so shortly after that dream, God gave me another dream.
So he brought. I just want to make sure I
Yeah,
didn't
make
miss
sure.
anything you
Yeah.
said. Sean said, "Don't over spiritualize
Yeah.
everything," and kind of just brushed it off.
He brushed it
But
off,
the Lord had just given you this
and
dream.
I knew it
But
was
he
from
brushed it
God.
off, kind of what happened in the dream
Yeah, he
is what
did.
he
He
did.
thought, I said, Sean, that python is symbolic.
Hmm.
You're messing with something or someone who will kill you if you do
Right.
not leave it or them
Okay.
alone. And I didn't know what was going on in his life. I didn't know what he was doing.
Mm.
And then I came home from work one day and I walked through the kitchen to the back door and I see that the sliding glass door into our dining area is wide open. And so I knew it was Sean because he's just my child. He does things like that. He leaves doors open and stuff. So as I'm walking through the dining area, I see a snake on my floor in my house, in the
Oh wow.
house,
Okay.
between the living area and the dining area. And so I froze. See, the Lord knows I I am scared to death of snakes,
Hmm.
and I equate them with evil, even though not all snakes are evil. And so right about that time, I froze, and Sean came walking through the sliding glass door. And I said, Sean, look, there's a snake. You left the door open, and look what just came in. And he said, oh, Mom, it's just a gardener snake. Like it's a little bitty, it's not going to hurt you. And he picked it up, and where we live, there's an empty, a lot of land on the other side, so he wouldn't let the snake go on the other side of the fence, in the property. And I said, Sean, you're not listening. This is about you. This is about you. Again, this is the second warning. And once again, said the same exact thing to me, Mom, why do you do this? You make everything about, you spiritualize everything.
Hmm.
He just didn't understand. And so 3 weeks after Danielle died, um, on the evening of, I guess it was July, I lost Danielle on July the 3rd. On July the 22nd is when Sean died. So it was the evening before, it was on the 21st of July. I worked late that night. I come in. Sean comes running down the stairs. He's weeping and he's crying. He has a Bible in his hand. And he says, Mom, look, they gave me this Bible at church and I'm gonna go to Bible college. I just made a decision. Like, the pastors prayed over me and they gave me a word and I wanna go to Bible college, Mom, and I wanna, lead people to Christ. And we hugged each other and we cried and I was just so, so excited and that was the last conversation I ever had with my son.
Wow.
I woke up the next morning, left for work, like I always do. And I have to back up and say, Sean is the kind of child that would text me all day long, even when I'm at work. I don't, just I love you, Mom, or this or that or the
Yeah.
other. And so I get home from work. I had not heard from him all day. He wasn't at home. I texted him and I called him. No response. And when I tell you I knew in my gut he was dead, I knew in my gut he was dead. Just like that.
Wow. Mm.
And I remember, I called his friends, told my family, and they kept saying, and even my friends, Pam, I think you're overreacting. It's just been a few hours since you've heard from him. Like, just wait in the morning. Maybe he's somewhere. Maybe he spent the night at somebody's house. Maybe he forgot his charger. Maybe his phone's dead. People were giving me all of the, and I knew. I knew. So I did that. I didn't try not to overreact, even though I knew. The next morning, I still not heard from him. I called the police. They sent somebody over to take a missing persons, report. telling me it hasn't even been 24 hours yet. And I said, but I know, like, I know my son's dead.
Mm.
And she was like, well, it was a female officer. And she said, well, all we can do is, is we can put it in as a missing persons report. And she told me the exact same thing that my friends had been telling me. Maybe he went to New Orleans or went out of town. He doesn't want his mom to know. He doesn't want you to, she was giving me all of these different scenarios. I said, no, I know Sean, and Sean would always answer my texts and my phone calls.
Mm.
And so she said, well, what you can do, if you've already called all of his friends, is you can go on Facebook and see if he's communicated with somebody that maybe you don't know. Maybe there's somebody that he's talked to. So I did that.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that he had communicated with somebody named Landon the night before, that night, the last night that I saw him, like at midnight that night, he had communicated with somebody named Landon. So I sent him a message on Messenger and I said, please call me. This is Sean's mom and I don't know where Sean is.
Mm-hmm.
And believe it or not, he called me like within 5 minutes. And so then he told me, Miss Pam, I picked Sean up from your house about 9 o'clock on Wednesday morning, and I drove him to Plank Road. I said, what do you mean you drove him to Plank Road? Why would Sean ask you to drive him to Plank Road? He said, because he wanted me to bring him to this abandoned house so he can meet with somebody to buy heroin. I was like, what are you talking about?
Mm.
Like, he just told me last night he was going to go to, like, this doesn't make sense. It's not adding up. Landon, what are you talking about? And I said, what house? Where did you bring him? I don't know, Miss Pam. I don't know the address. But if you come and pick me up, I'll show you the house. So I called my friend Roy, who drove from Mandeville, picked me up. We went and picked up Landon. Landon sent me his address. And when I'm telling you, I saw it on his face when he came walking down the driveway. He was white as a ghost. He climbed into Roy's car, and when we got close to that house on 4th Street, Landon was terrified. He crouched down in the middle seat of Roy's SUV because Roy slowed down right in front of that house, this yellow, dilapidated house. And Landon was freaking out. Don't stop, Miss Pam. You don't understand. Like, there's a camera sitting in that window and it feeds to Hakeem's phone and he can see us. Like, he can see this car. And if he knows I brought you here, he will kill me and my old lady.
Wow.
He's a bad dude. Like, he will kill me and my old lady and my kids. He was like freaking out. I was like, Landon, calm down. And Roy kind of like pulled up a little bit further. And Landon kept saying, no, no, you got to go. I showed you the house. Go, go, go. So I was just like, I was like blown, like, I didn't understand what was happening, right? Oh, gosh. So I remember calling, BRPD, the Baton Rouge Police Department. And at that point, it was a missing persons investigation. And so they kept brushing me off, saying, he could just be out of state. He could tell me the same thing over and over and over and over. But I knew in my spirit my son was dead. And so I told the missing persons detective, Chad, I said, I want to organize, a walk to try to find Sean. I know he's dead. I just don't know where he is. But if this is the last place he was, if this is the house where he was last, then, and Chad, Chad told me that he went to the house and he said it's an abandoned house. Nobody lives there. And he said, I can't get a search warrant for the house because it's abandoned and we have no probable cause for a search warrant. But what I did was I reached out to a friend of mine who was a federal agent. And I told him about Danielle. I told him about Sean being missing. And he came over to my house, spent 3 hours at my kitchen table, and did an actual whiteboard, an actual board of the case. And I had already at this point, I was having to play detective because BRPD thought it was just a missing persons case. And they really weren't, looking at it as, a murder or anything like that yet. And so my friend did this whiteboard. I tried to give it to BRPD. They didn't want it. So what happened was I got a call from a private investigator, and he called me and he said, "Miss Pam, I just found out about your son Sean being missing, and I want to help you find your son's body." And I said, Jerry, his name is Jerry Summers. I said, "I don't have the money to pay for a private investigator." And he said, "I'm not asking you for money. God told me to help you."
Wow.
And so I met with him. He came over and I met with him. And he told me that he had an idea. And I hope I'm not getting this jumbled up but I think what I was wanting to tell you before this was that we did a walk, like to try to find Sean. I had law enforcement showed up, family and friends showed up. We walked up and down Ford Street. We walked, and Chad told me, he says, "I can't give you permission to trespass, at this house where Sean went missing." But he said, but I also am not going to notice when you guys, walk up there. And so my family and my friends, the federal agent that I called, Jerry Summers, all of us, and Chad told me that he and his partner also searched the perimeter of that house because there was a shed behind that house, and Sean's body wasn't there. We walked the neighborhood. We searched the canal in that neighborhood, and we couldn't find him. Now, I want to make note of the fact that it's 101 degrees outside. This is in July.
Yeah, wow.
Jerry Summers had he had called me and said he wanted to work the case. He had began to surveil that house, meaning he sat in front of that house for almost 3 weeks, videoing the activities that went in and out of that house. There was activity in that house. The BRPD was telling me it was an abandoned house. Nobody lived there. There was activity. Jerry had took a picture of the fact that the air conditioner in the window, they had a window unit. It was running. It was dripping water. The energy meter was running. So it really wasn't abandoned. There was activity in that house. But they refused and told me that they couldn't get a search warrant because there wasn't enough evidence of foul play because we hadn't gotten Sean's body at this point. So, but when I met with Jerry, he said, "I have an idea," like a couple of weeks into surveilling the property. And Jerry was, he would tell me, "Miss Pam, there's no birds. Like, I have not seen any birds, that would suggest that there's a body, that's been disposed of." Because Jerry, Jerry had utilized a group that has cadaver dogs, and they had searched the neighborhood with cadaver dogs, searched a park nearby, because I knew that my son was dead. And they believed me. They knew that I'm not just this loony toony woman. Like, I knew my child was dead. And so that's an important thing to remember. So Jerry said he had an idea. He said, "I'm going to reach out to a contact of mine." And he said, "But I'm not going to tell you about it until after I do it." So then he wound up calling me the following Saturday. And what happened was he had worked with Eugene Collins, who at the time was the head of the NAACP in Baton Rouge.
Okay.
He had worked with Eugene Collins, Jerry had, on a case, a West Baton Rouge case where a young black man, his murder had been covered up. And Jerry had helped Eugene and helped the attorneys and helped people uncover evidence that this was a cover up. So Eugene and Jerry had a relationship. They trusted each other. So Jerry called Eugene and said, I need to meet you for breakfast. I have something I have to ask of you. So they met for breakfast, and Jerry slid a picture of Sean across the table. And he said, you see this young boy? Sean, he's missing. He went missing in Zion City. His mom knows he's dead, and all she wants is the body. Can you get the word out in Zion City and let them know that if we don't have a body by Wednesday, the feds are going to mow the grass back there? And the last thing he said, oh, and by the way, Miss Pam's oldest son is a federal agent. He's an FBI agent, and he also wants his little brother's body.
Right.
And Eugene said, oh, blankety blank. Okay, I'll see what I can do.
Mm-hmm.
That was on a Saturday. So Monday morning, really I say morning, but that morning, Jerry got a call. Well, Eugene got a call. And someone said, the lady next door knows where the boy's body is.
Mm-hmm.
And that person wound up calling BRPD around noon, 12:30 in the afternoon, and requested a wellness check. Now, mind you, I already requested one and they wouldn't do it. And so what happened was BRPD showed up and Sean's body was in the driveway on a plastic Walmart fold-out table. The legs weren't opened. It was just flat, kind of like this. And it was slid under, partially under, a car that was in that driveway. Same car we walked by, searching for Sean, looking for Sean. The same car, BRPD, searched Chad, searched that property. We all did. We saw the blue car. My son's body was not sitting there. I guarantee you I would have seen it.
Yeah.
I would have smelled it.
Okay. My goodness.
And so Chad called me and said, Miss Pam, we got his body. Wow. When he called me, I was just pulling up in a Walmart parking lot. And I remember sitting in the parking lot and just weeping. Because I want to back up and tell you this part of the story. When we were doing the walk that day, Chad called me into his car. Like he was sitting in an undercover car, but he was like watching over us. And we also had a regular police car that was like watching over the group as we went through this neighborhood. Really bad. Everybody in Baton Rouge knows Zion City is controlled by gangs and drugs. And so they were there to protect us, if anything were to happen. Chad said, Miss Pam, I want to talk to you a minute. So I climbed into his car, and he pulled from his visor a stack this thick of pictures of young people. And he said, Miss Pam, this young girl's been missing for 6 months, and her family doesn't know what happened to her. This young guy is also one of my cases, and he's been missing for 1.5 years. And he showed me face after face after face, and I sat there and cried.
My goodness.
Because I had just gone through 3 weeks of hell not knowing where my child was. I can't imagine people going through it for months or years. And Chad said, Miss Pam, I want you to prepare yourself, because he said hundreds of people go missing every day. He said hundreds of thousands, across over 200,000 a year. Think about that. Across the United States go missing.
Wow.
And those families never know what happened to them.
Yeah.
And I told him, I looked at him and I said, with all due respect for every one of those families, I am nobody special, but I am a child of the living God, as was my son Sean. And the Bible is very clear in Matthew that if one little sparrow falls from a tree and dies, it doesn't do so unless God has willed it, and God sees exactly where it falls and dies. God saw what happened to Sean. God was there when he died. He knows where his body is. And the Bible also says that if we have faith the size of a mustard seed, that we can speak to any mountain and tell it to move, and it will move. And I am believing and speaking to this mountain that it's going to move, and I am going to get my son's body back. That's what I told him.
Wow.
And a friend of mine, Andy, who's also a prophet, had called me a few days before we got Sean's body, and I was sitting outside in my courtyard, and she prayed this beautiful prayer over me that the Lord would pull back the veil of darkness from where, and uncover wherever Sean's body was, that it would be brought out. And she gave me a word that said, the Lord is angered by what is by this injustice to you and your seed, and that you will see God's hand, and you will see his glory. And so I sat in that Walmart parking lot, and I was weeping, thanking God for my son's body. Didn't understand, Josh. But I remember telling the Lord, I don't understand. But you're so much wiser than I am. And I know that there are reasons that I'll never understand. So I'm not going to ask you why. I'm going to trust you. But do not let my children's deaths be in vain.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I ask of you. I remember I had to go to the coroner's office. To meet with the coroner, I met with Shane Evans, who was his right-hand man at the time. And Shane said, Pam, do you want to see Sean's body the way that we found him? And I took this deep, deep gulp, because I don't watch horror movies. I've never watched a horror movie in my entire life. But because Shane said it was really hard for me to look at it. I don't know that you really ought to look at it. I don't know that you're going to want to look at it. I said, Shane, I'm well aware that Sean is no longer in that body, because the Bible is very clear that to be, the second the breath of life leaves our body, our bodies are just, they're going to return back into dust. Mm-hmm. But I said, I want to see how you found my son. Mm. In the same shorts that I sent that video to you, right. He was wearing those LSU shorts. Wow. And it was just 3.5 weeks decomposed. It was horrendous. Mm. I'd never seen anything so horrific in my life. Mm. But he still had his tennis shoes on. They were hanging off of his bones. Mm. And what was so striking to me is that one of his arms had not decomposed. All of his other body had decomposed, but there was a tattoo on his arm that had not decomposed. And they were able to do a match of his body. Chad texted me, can you send me some pictures of Sean's tattoos? And I did.
Okay.
So they were able to do a positive ID on that while they waited for the dental records to come back.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I forgot to tell you earlier in my story is that after Danielle died, Sean kept telling me, and I told you he was wrestling with God about his sister being dead,
Right.
and his dad being dead, and his other brother being dead, or his brother being dead. He would tell me just out of the blue, Mom, I'm going to die young, and I'm going to die a really brutal death. You just need to know that. And I just looked at him, and I was so angered. I had just lost Danielle. And I said, what is wrong with you, Sean? You know I just lost Danielle, and I lost your brother, Matt, and I've lost your dad. Why would you say something that horrific to me? Mom, it's true. And he would quote the scripture, it's better for me to die. It's better, that I die because I'm going to go into the presence of the Lord.
Right. Yeah.
And that, and I would just look at him like, you're not understanding. I'm a mother that's weeping and still mourning. Why would you say something that cruel to me? But he said, Mom, you need to know this. Like, I'm going to die young, and it's going to be brutal. And it's so crazy, Josh, how, all of these things transpired, right? And they were just pieces, just things that I thought were just like the snakes and all of this. And my son telling me he was going to die young. And I never could have imagined, but it was just like, it was, I believe, God's grace, because I know that he knows what's going to happen tomorrow. He knows a year from now and 10 years from now.
That's right. Yeah.
He's already been to tomorrow. And out of his tenderness and his love for me as a mom, I think that those were seeds that just to prepare me, even though I didn't let it, register completely, but it was almost like, I was being prepared for something I didn't know was going to happen.
Yeah. Right.
But what's so mind-blowing is that, and believe me, I tried from day one. I was like, I'm going to fight for justice for Sean, because I knew that he was murdered. Several off, the federal agent and Chad and Jerry, they all believe he was set up, or for whatever he was doing, whatever he did, he was messing with people he shouldn't have been messing with, right? And they were trying to get rid of him. Because when his autopsy came back, he had 120 milligrams of pure fentanyl. 2 milligrams is deadly. 2.
Goodness.
He had 120. He had no other drugs in his system, just some caffeine, like from a cup of coffee.
Right. Wow.
And so I began to just, fight for justice for him. And Murphy Paul wouldn't return my phone calls.
It was the chief
Chief
of police
at that time. Now, I give you a little bit of lay some groundwork. At the same time that Sean died, Murphy Paul had just dismantled the entire narcotics division of Baton Rouge Police Department, because 11 officers had their hands either in drugs or protecting dealers. So he had just fired 11 of them.
Okay.
So, because I remember, I got the first call from Chad around 1:00 in the afternoon. We got Sean's body. Chad called me back later that night, and I'm sorry if I'm jumping around, but he called me about 9 o'clock that same night. Sean was found, and he said, "Miss Pam, I just want to check on you." This was a really good guy. He said, "I just want to make sure you're okay. Like, I'm so, so sorry this happened." And so I thanked him, and he said, "But I also called to apologize to you." And I said, "Apologize to me for what? You don't owe me an apology, Chad." And he said, "Yes, ma'am, I do. Because I consider myself a Christian, and I didn't have enough faith to believe with you that we would find Sean's body."
Wow. Hmm.
And so I thought that that was
Yeah.
really profound, that, he showed me who he was. And whereas this other detective that called me, who was a murder investigation,
Yeah.
a homicide investigation, that detective called me and had the audacity to tell me, I think Landon's story is, and I don't even know if I told you Landon's story. I'm so kind of
No,
mixed
no,
up
you,
right
you
now.
didn't share that. The only thing we've heard about Landon is that he brought you all to the
Oh
house
yeah.
and that he was
So before
scared
I
to
tell you
death.
this part, I'll tell you Landon's story. Landon's story is, and he stuck to it. Like I could tell he, just, it was like he would feed me pieces of bologna, like he would give to a dog just to kind of shut him up. He would give me these little pieces, but never tell me the full truth. He said, "I picked Sean up. I drove him to meet with Kay." He called him Kay. He said, "I don't know the dude's name, Miss Pam. His name, we just call him Kay."
Mm-hmm.
To meet with Kay because he wanted to buy heroin. I was like,
Okay.
"Really?" Okay, Sean wanted to buy heroin. Okay, really? And he said, and so Sean, we met Kay at the house, and Kay and Sean went into the house, and I waited outside, Miss Pam, in the car, and because that house smells.
Mm.
And he said he said there's holes in the floor and holes in the walls, and I can't stand to go in that house, Miss Pam. So I told Sean, "No, I'm going to wait out here in the car. You go in the house." So Sean went in the house. He came out a few minutes later. He had bought some heroin, and we split it. And Sean did his hit. He snorted it,
Mm.
and I wanted to inject mine. So I began to heat mine up. And he said, while I was heating my heroin up, Sean opened the door and took off running down 4th Street. And I don't know what happened to him, Miss Pam. He disappeared.
Hmm.
And Hakeem or Kay left, but he drove back up with a big white dude. And I told him, "I don't know where Sean is. Have you seen him?" And so me and Kay and the white dude looked everywhere for Sean, Miss Pam. Like, we went everywhere in the neighborhood. Drove up and down 4th Street. We could never find Sean. We don't know what happened to I don't know what happened to him, Miss Pam. That was his story.
Hmm. Okay.
But people don't disappear into thin air. And people who die with 120 milligrams of fentanyl, they die instantly.
Yeah.
They don't have the energy, the strength, or even any life in them to get up and jump out of a car and go running down a street. So that was a lie.
Mm-hmm.
So, because BRPD wouldn't do anything, I wrote emails to Murphy Paul. I wrote emails to the mayor.
Okay.
Like, I was trying to get people to help me with this case because I knew foul play was something happened,
Okay.
and I wanted to get to the bottom of it. And so I never heard back. I wrote multiple emails, made phone calls. Jerry made phone calls. Nobody answered our phone calls. Nobody answered emails. So one day I got a call from Tanja Miles, and she's an advocate who works with the mayor's office and different people, actually with the DA's office, trying to, get people, addicts help.
Mm.
She goes through the community with her team, and they give out Narcan. She's been an advocate for addiction because she's a recovering addict.
Okay. Wow.
And so anyway, I had met Tanja through someone else, and I won't go into all of that. But Tanja emailed me and invited me to a NAMI conference in downtown Baton Rouge. And it's a conference regarding mental illness. And so she invited me to it, and I just felt led in my spirit to go.
Okay.
Because mental illness is all encompassing, meaning people that are on drugs are usually dealing with anxiety or depression or any manner of mental instability. And so she knew about Danielle and Danielle's battle with addiction, so she invited me. And so I felt led, and I went. And when I walked in, I saw her. I saw some other people that I had met through the DA's office, because I had met with an ADA about Sean's case, who also told me we don't have enough evidence to prosecute Hakeem. She said, she told me, I believe Hakeem set him up. I have no doubt. But we don't have evidence that he is even, we don't have evidence that he gave Sean this fentanyl. We don't have proof of it. So she said, we can't, prosecute this case. We need more evidence.
Now, Hakeem was he known to be a drug dealer?
Yeah, he is a drug dealer.
Okay, so they knew this about him. He wasn't just somebody that was under the radar?
Some people knew of him, yeah.
Okay.
So he's not like, I wouldn't say he was on everybody's radar.
Okay.
So, but anyway, at the conference that I went to, I saw the mayor. And anybody who knows me, I'm not an especially bold person. Mm-hmm. But I went walking up to her, and I said, Mayor Broom, my name is Pamela Rivas, and I sent you many, many emails and called your office, and I don't understand why you haven't returned my phone calls or my emails. And she looked at me puzzled, and I could tell she was being genuine. Mm-hmm. And she said, emails, phone calls. I'm so sorry, but I don't believe I've ever received an email or a note that you called me. What were they about? And so I told her, I've lost 3 kids to drugs. My son Sean to, my daughter Danielle to fentanyl, and my son Sean to fentanyl. And BRPD refuses to work Sean's case. And she grabbed my hands, and with tears coming down her eyes, she said, I believe that this is a God orchestrated meeting. Those are her exact words. And she said, I want you to meet with me at my office Monday. I'll have someone call you, and we're going to talk about this. She kept her word. I met with her that Monday. Okay. And while I was in that meeting with her, I told her my story. I told her how Murphy Paul ignored my phone calls, my text. And so she called him, and right there in front of me, we're sitting at a table in her office, and she put the phone on the table, and he answered immediately, like first ring.
But when the mayor's calling, you answer.
And she said, Murphy, I just want you to know you're on speakerphone. And I'm sitting here with Pamela Rivas, and she has told me some disconcerting news that she has about her son Sean, and she's been trying to meet with you about his case, and that you won't return her phone calls. And he goes, the Sean Rivas case. And you could hear him. He's like shuffling around. Oh, Sean Rivas. Oh, yeah. I remember that case. Why haven't you met with her? Just a lot going on, but I will. And she said, Murphy, I need your word that you will meet with her in the next few days, not the next few weeks, the next few days. Do I have your word on that? Yes, ma'am. You've got, my word on that. I never heard back from his office.
Really?
Never.
Wow.
Now, whether or not it has something to do with everything that came down on him about this narcotics division, this that was under
Yeah.
his reign. I mean, he was the head, right? And 11 of those guys were taking bribes and doing all kinds of things under the table.
Mm.
So whether or not that's why they didn't pursue the case, I don't know. But I told the Lord, I said, Lord, I'll never completely know all of the facts. Um, but I just want justice for my son.
Yes. Right.
And shortly thereafter, um, the East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's Office picked up the case.
Okay.
They heard about it. And I got a call. And Tanner Jenkins at the time was the commander of the narcotics squad. He's now the major.
Okay.
And at the time, he was the commander of that squad. Well, he still is over that squad and over the new gang intelligence squad that they just formulated. But they picked up the case, and within 3 months, they had arrested Hakeem. And they could never find enough evidence to indict him on murder, but they were able to set up buys to where he sold them fentanyl and collect enough evidence for federal charges. And so he was arrested, and so I went to court for his hearings, and I met with the prosecutor at the time, the prosecutor who was prosecuting that case. And he told me, he said, I met with him in person. He said, Miss Rivas, because the case is technically not about Sean's death, I can't allow, the court's not going to allow you to testify. But he said, what you can do is you can write the judge a letter and you can tell him your story about Hakeem and about your son. And so I did. And so at each of Hakeem's hearings, because come to find out, when Tanner and his team busted Hakeem, it was in a church.
In a church.
In a church, and I sent you the article. His father is either a real pastor or is hiding under the guise of being a pastor. And when they went into this church, Salvation of Jesus Christ Church, which is on Page Street, which is just a couple of streets over from Ford Street. And Landon had told me that Hakeem sold drugs out of the Ford Street house and the Page Street house where he lives with his father, Reverend Allen.
So the church was in a home.
The church was in a home,
Okay.
a supposed church.
Right. Okay.
And so when they busted Hakeem, in the podium were illegal weapons, drugs. In the dishwasher, there was $80,000 of cash. It was all drug money. And a lot. I mean, I can't even name the list, but it's in one of the articles, all that they busted him on.
Different types of drugs.
Drugs,
Okay.
scales to where he's,
Okay.
measuring fentanyl. He had all of it.
Okay.
So the judge at Hakeem's sentencing referenced my impact letter statement because he asked Hakeem if Hakeem wanted to say anything before he sentenced him. One of the things the judge told Hakeem was, Hakeem, this is not your first time in trouble with the law. And apparently you didn't learn your lesson from being in jail before and from being on probation. And he said, is there anything you want to say? And Hakeem said, I want to say I'm sorry to my family and others. And that's how he said it, and others. Um, and he never, admitted to anything like that. But anyway, his mom and dad, sorry, I'm skipping around a lot. The judge said, Hakeem, he said, what I'm hoping is going to happen is that when you go behind bars this time, is that you're going to think about what you've done. And he said, and though there has been a death that has been attributed to your drug dealings, and even though you were not indicted for that, there are many that believe it's attributed to you. And I agree. So I believe, I'm hoping and believing for you that this time in jail, you will think about your life. You're a young man. You've got kids that are going to be without a dad for 14 years, because that's what he sentenced them to.
Wow. Okay.
But you'll think about, and that when you walk out, you'll be different than when you walked in, because you'll still have a chance to live a different kind of a life.
And he's in his late 20s?
Yeah, he was like 26, I think, when he was arrested and put in jail. I can't remember. I think 26. And what's so amazing to me, Josh, is that I saw his mom and his dad and another person, because those were only the three that were representative of his family there. And the judge even asked, the Eli Abad, who was the prosecutor prosecuting Hakeem, the federal prosecutor. The judge even asked Eli and Hakeem's attorney, who were all these people in the courtroom? Because so many people from my Bible study and my family, and and even Shane Evans, and even the coroner, even Bo showed up. People were there to support me because they knew that he was responsible for Sean's death. And the judge Eli told us in the back room, the family afterwards, the judge he was floored because he's never seen this much support in a federal case. So it moved him, and your letter moved him, because he knew. And I mean, I just wept. I was just weeping in the court. But not only for, the loss of my son and my family. Our family's been through hell. But looking at Hakeem's mom and dad, no parent ever imagines when you give birth to a child, especially if you raise them in church, to know the Lord, that they're ever going to, stray away or use drugs or be killed. We never imagine our kids bearing, as a parent, never imagine bearing our kids. We imagine them bearing us.
Right, yeah.
And I would watch his mom cry each service. I mean, each of the hearings, and my heart broke for her. But only God can put love in a mother's heart, not only for Hakeem, because I have no anger in his heart. I've had so many people say, do you wish him dead? Do you wish him something happens to him in prison? No, I don't. I pray he gets saved.
Yes.
I pray that he comes to know the Lord the way I know the Lord, that he is the answer to everything that ails the human heart. There's no drug that can satisfy. There's no amount of money, fame, power, prestige. Nothing can satisfy the human heart and soul except the one who created us. And that's what I have learned through all of my losses, is that everything in this life is a gift. And our lives are like mist. They're like vapors. They're here one day and gone the next.
Right.
And we have to hold everything in life like this with open palms. That includes our kids. That includes our spouses, our loved ones, our jobs, our bank accounts, everything, because in a heartbeat, we can lose it without any warning. It can just be taken from us, whether by the hands of evil, by the enemy, by bad people, bad decisions. We can lose it just like that. And the only thing that no one can ever take from us is our faith.
That's right.
And that if we have God, we have enough. Because what I learned when I lost John and Matt in those 4 months, I saw that the Lord wasn't fully on the throne of my heart. Because when my world fell apart and I lost my husband and my son and my home and my life that I had known for decades, when all of that was pulled out from under me, I was angry, as if God owed me anything. God owes us nothing. He gave us everything when he sent Jesus to die for us on the cross. He literally owes us nothing. The fact that he gives us health and gives us children and gives us all the beautiful gifts, they're gifts. But just like in the book of Job, when Job's wife tries to get Job to curse God after Job loses 10 kids,
Right.
Job said no. Shall we, just serve God when he blesses us? This is Pam paraphrase.
Right.
I'm not going to curse God. The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away.
That's right. Yeah.
And I tell you what, that is the anthem of my heart now. And the Lord he's in the rightful place in my heart. And I hold everything like this now. He takes, it all belongs to him, because the bottom line is we're on this earth for a brief amount of time. And we have a responsibility, those of us who know the Lord, the Great Commission, we have got to share our stories, because people need to know that God is real, that he's not some fairy tale. He's not some person that lived 2,000 years ago. He's a real person, because I'm telling you, know what it's like to pray, to die. Because when I lost Matt and John, I prayed to die. I didn't want to live anymore. And it had not been for the prayers of my dad and my family and Jesus, who prays for us, I know I wouldn't have lived through that, because that was horrible. Never imagined I would ever lose 2 kids a decade later. Never could I, in my wildest imagination, know that I would lose 2 more. But I learned something, that God is my greatest treasure. And, faith isn't faith until it's tested. And I tell you what, I was put in an incinerator, losing 2 kids in 3 weeks.
Mm.
I shouldn't have been able to survive. And it wasn't me who survived it. It was God's grace. One of the things that Shane Evans told me, he sent me a message, after I met with him about seeing those pictures of Sean's body. He said, Pam, I just want to tell you that I recognize a special grace that's over you, that you carry. And I didn't understand what he meant completely. But the Lord is showing me more and more. When people say, how did you, I have people ask me all the time, how did you survive losing 3 kids? It was God's grace. Because it thrust me on this platform where I've had this, I've gone and I've spoken before the legislature, before the criminal, defense
committee, and I've spoken about, crime in this community, and I've spoken about fentanyl, and I've helped fight for new laws to change. Um, and and I have so many people that approach me after I spoke at a DA summit on drugs, and people always come up to me afterwards and say, "How did you survive?" And I say, "Jesus,
That's it.
it wasn't me. There's no way a mom can lose 3 kids, survive it on their own.
Mm.
You can't. The flesh is not that strong,
Mm.
but it's God's strength and His Spirit that lives inside of us. And it enables us. I'm so sorry.
Mm-hmm.
It equips us to be able to walk through hard things. Um, I tell people I went through a metamorphosis because there's no other word to describe it. And when I researched, what caterpillars go through in a cocoon, and when I read about how um, they, after they build this cocoon around themselves, they literally begin to devour themselves, and they turn into um, caterpillar soup.
Mm.
And it's that soup with all of these different, God's orchestrated all of this. Obviously, He's engineered it, but that becomes the nutrients. That soup becomes the nutrients for the caterpillar to transform into a butterfly. Um, but there's a dying of self you go through when you lose a child or you go through a lot of loss. The Lord just crucifies you, like there's nothing left. It's just Him that can shine forth.
Yes.
So, it's thrust me on this platform, and I have all of these people that reach out to me because I'm part of several fentanyl groups. Some of them have 100,000 members. I mean, that's how many, every single year, over 100,000 people die from fentanyl.
Right. In the United States alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I told you earlier, I have people reach out to me from all different countries. How do you survive? And I tell them, Jesus.
That's right.
He literally is the reason that we can stand. And one of the things that I told Shane Evans, I said, Shane, joy and pain and sorrow can coexist. Because even as, I was crushed beyond words, I had a joy that didn't move
Mm.
through those weeks.
Yeah.
And it was the Lord. He's that real.
Yes.
He meets with us, in our darkest pits. He is life.
Yes, He is.
And I just give Him all the praise and glory for everything He's brought me
Yes.
through.
Praise God. I've just been sitting here, hanging on to every word that you said. Your story, your testimony, really that's what it is, a testimony. And they overcame by the blood of the Lamb, the word of their testimony. It's a testament to, as you said, the grace of God. Amazing grace. How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. You mentioned Job any number of times. The question is asked by many people, why do bad things happen to good people? You look at Job, you look at what happened. He lost all of his children. He lost his wealth. He was probably the wealthiest man in the world at that time. His friends, well, with friends like that, who needs enemies?
Right.
His own wife, as you said, told him, why don't you just curse God and die? But Job's response was, though God slay me, yet I'll trust Him.
Yes.
And as the song says, as I look all around me, and His face I cannot see, I know that through the lattice He beholdeth even me. God will never leave us. He'll never forsake us. I believe that your children right now are in heaven. Glory. Some would push back on that, but we're talking about grace.
Yes.
God's grace, His mercy, they come even before His judgment. And they knew in their hearts
You want
you didn't fail them at all because you gave them Jesus. And I believe that that was with them even in the most difficult times and even in those last moments. We don't know exactly their last moments per se, what was in there going through their head or their circumstance, but when you have and you've been exposed to the gospel and the love of
it
God,
was in them.
it
They
was,
knew.
oh, I believe it. I can sense the Lord as
It
you were
was
sharing it.
so crazy is that Landon told me, because I talked to him about 3 times after that day that we drove him there. I kept calling him, trying to get more information out of him. And he said, and he was weeping like a little baby. He said, Miss Pam, all Sean did the entire way to meet Hakeem was he told me the gospel. He preached Jesus to me and told me to leave the drugs.
Yeah, wow.
So yeah, I know my kids are with the Lord because, like you said, the Lord looks at the heart. And He
Yes, He
looks at
does.
our hearts for Him,
Yes, He
and
does.
not in our weaknesses and our failings.
But your story, it's your life, with your experience, it touches on so many different points. Like I'm sitting here as a parent myself. I've got, as you know, two young boys, and I think I'm gonna go home and give them a little hug, a little tighter. Um, One of the concerns that I think every and any parent has is something that you have realized 3 times over, and that is that you lose your child, and especially in a capacity like what you're dealing with. So first of all, the point is, as parents, we only have our children for a short period of time, and we've got to do exactly what you did. It's not about, oh, just pushing them to be successful in school or career, any of those things. Those things all pass away anyways. But to give them the gospel.
It's the
That
greatest thing
that
we can give them.
that's got to be, I hope, a take-home point from your example in your life here and what you shared. As parents have got to give their children the gospel. It's the only thing that's going to carry them. And it's the only thing that's going to stick. And I heard one individual say it, it's hard to put out the lights that God has put up in your heart. But also, what your story deals with is this problem that we've got of you're talking about fentanyl and drugs in general. And we don't want to. I don't want to dare ruin this with politics, so I'm not going to go into it too far. But we have to understand that you're dealing with something that your situation is the result of multiple layers of government, and police fall into that category, of course. But when you look at the federal level, the fentanyl that is getting into this country,
Yep.
100,000 deaths a year that have been cataloged.
Yeah.
There's probably many others.
There's many more. There has to be.
That's getting into this country. This is something that's not a partisan. There should be no aisle dividing this. We're talking about a clear problem, and you have dealt with now the consequences. You're left holding those consequences. This is a real thing.
No, it is a
And
real
that's why, as an American, when I hear certain things said or not said, especially from politicians, and what they really should be called public servants, because that's what they're elected to do.
Yeah.
But the laws and the policies at the federal level address in great part how this stuff gets into our country. And then
Absolutely.
you're talking about the local level as well. City, state, in our case parish, but counties everywhere else.
Right.
Everywhere else. Good government will protect people. It won't fully stop people from breaking the law, of course, or doing
Right.
things, but it is a
That's
stopgap
what it's
measure.
there for.
That's exactly. And when our leaders fail us as the people, it doesn't just result in an election being lost or even money being wasted, when there's malfeasance. And I'm not saying that directly, but based on some of what you stated in this conversation,
Yeah.
there's a lot of question marks. A lot.
Oh,
Let's
yeah.
just be blunt. When you have that, this is a serious issue. It doesn't
is.
just result in, like I said, wasted money. You're talking about lives. So I really hope that anybody and everyone that hears your story realizes that this is the end result of these things that I've just brought up. And that's where we've got to get very serious. When you talk about politics and elections and all that stuff, everybody just jumps immediately to the next presidential election. It's like, well, wait a minute. There's a lot more that's
Yeah.
involved in this. But at the same time, I want to hone in on something. Law enforcement. They're dealing with this on the front lines.
Yeah, they were.
I thank God for good law enforcement, for those that are truly doing all that they can using the resources that they have to put an end to this. And now you've had a lot of experience now interacting with law enforcement. You mentioned East Baton Rouge Sheriff's Department. Um, Give me a little insight as far as your experience and what you've seen.
They have just been the antithesis of what I went through at BRPD. Notwithstanding Chad was phenomenal. Chad Montgomery, he was the missing persons detective
Right.
that went through a lot to be there for me and support me and help me. But he was the only person that really supported me. And I remember being invited to go and speak somewhere, and I didn't really know who was even going to be there. But Karen, who does, she invited me to
She's
go.
a journalist.
Right. She invited me to go and speak. And she said, Pam, you've got to go share your story. And so I didn't know who I was sharing it with, but I went. And it was a room packed full of probably close to 80 law enforcement people and other people, law enforcement and other people. And I remember bringing up the detective, the homicide detective, who never returned my phone calls, didn't return my text messages, and had the audacity to tell me, well, Sean just jumped out of the car and died there, and we just didn't see him or whatever. Now, if you saw pictures, and which I could show you, of his body sticking out, you would see that there's no way we could have missed it. So anyway, when I actually mentioned that person's name, his full name.
Okay.
And his name is Jeff. And I had several people come up to me afterwards and tell me, pull me aside and say, I mean, people were just floored by my story because they were predominantly law enforcement, good, I think probably good law enforcement. And two of our past police chiefs happened to be in the audience. And so they came up to me and talked to me as well. And one of them said, I know Jeff personally, and he's not a bad guy. And more than likely, he didn't call you, he didn't return your text messages, and he told you what he told you because it was an order from his superior to not work Sean's case. I was like, wow. So yeah, I really, that says a lot because he said, I know the guy personally. And I later found out also, and I'm not going to mention through whom, but another law enforcement person, that during that time when they had dismantled the narcotics division, that there was a mandate or an order that came down that said we don't work any cases, you don't use any department resources, meaning money, time, gas, anything on any case that involves drugs. Now, can you imagine that? When this community is plagued by drugs, plagued by gangs. Gangs are the ones that, bring the drugs in and control the drug flow in and around here. And when I actually met with Eugene Collins later, about a year later, and I asked him how he got my son's body. I wanted to know. I said, I know God did it,
Yeah.
but he used you, and I want to know what you did, how you did that. And he said, I made a phone call. Made a phone call to the person who runs the streets there, who's over the streets.
Hmm.
And I was shocked. I was like, how do you have, I asked him point blank, how do you, because he told me he was a Christian. He told me how he and his wife cried many times over my story of losing my 3 kids because they watched it on the news. They knew about it. And he said, because God has called me to rescue gang members. And my wife and I have a ministry of doing that.
Wow.
And so I have to keep those communications open.
Okay.
I was able to make a phone call. And I don't know where Sean was or what they did with him, but they brought him out. And
So his body definitely wasn't there
no, it
before.
wasn't there.
It was put back
Right.
there, is what, according to what
But
he was saying.
Yeah, but we don't have proof. See,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
we don't have proof that Hakeem did anything.
Yeah.
But so yeah, law enforcement. I've met some really, really wonderful humans that are in law. My oldest son is an FBI agent.
Exactly. Yeah.
And he's in the squad that, guess what squad he's in? The squad that goes after the cartel. So he travels all over. He travels to Florida, to Texas, to everywhere. He's in the squad that is working to dismantle the
Wow.
cartel's webs.
Okay.
Never imagining my son, he went to LSU, got a nursing degree, joined the Army went into the Army as a ranger.
Okay.
When he got out, he was also a ranger instructor, and then he decided to get out of the Army because he had a wife and 3 kids, and he was gone so much and all of that, and I was glad. Then he went back was doing nursing. He was awarded a mortgage-free home in Kentucky because he was a Purple Heart recipient.
Wow. Okay.
And so, long story short, the home was in Kentucky, and so you pretty much have to take wherever. When they're giving you a mortgage, and my son, he's never. Jason gave his heart to Christ when he was a teenager,
Okay.
and so he's always walked with the Lord, and he didn't want to take the house, and so I had to look at him and say, I said, Jason, God is standing in front of you trying to give you a home, and you don't want to take it. But he was so humble. I didn't even know he was a Purple Heart recipient. His wife had to tell me.
Really?
But that just he's been through a lot of trauma overseas and war and all of that. But anyway, he wound up going back into nursing, being a nurse, and the FBI reached out to him and offered him a position. And this was before he lost Sean and his 2 siblings, his last 2 siblings. Okay. So he never, it's just so bizarre. When he was graduating from Quantico, it's right around the time when Danielle and Sean died.
Oh my.
I know.
Oh my. Organizations that, if you're comfortable naming a few or several that people would know, be able to look at, that deal with this. You said you are linked up with several organizations, right?
Yeah.
Specifically looking at fentanyl.
Yeah, there are many of them on Facebook. And right now it's, I can pull up on my phone all of, some of them, but Lost Voices of Fentanyl is probably the biggest.
Say that one again.
Lost Voices of Fentanyl.
Okay.
And the lady who spearheads that, April, she has, she does these marches in Washington, D.C., and she has been instrumental in getting laws changed. And I don't know if you have heard about it, but tomorrow, I was invited tomorrow to Bill Cassidy is signing the Halt Fentanyl Act here in Baton Rouge. And one of the representatives that I met when I was speaking before our legislature invited me. Roy Adams reached out to me, invited me, so I'm going to go to that tomorrow.
Excellent. Good.
And so some of these organizations like Lost Voices of Fentanyl and Fentanyl, I mean, there's lots of them. I can't even think of all of the names, but you're looking at hundreds of thousands of people that are members of these groups, and I'm a member of them.
Mm.
And the Lord's called me to I write. That's one of my gifts. And so, I have people following me online because I write about loss. And that's why people hear about me or see some of my postings. And that's why they'll write me and say, how did you survive this? And help me, like pray for me. And I have people asking me to pray for them, to help them. So yeah, there are a lot of good organizations out there that are making a difference, that have,
Right.
just pounded on the walls of Washington, D.C. and, demanded that the president do something. So our President Trump has signed some new laws regarding fentanyl because, just as recent as a year ago, we didn't have these laws on the books, meaning people could sell fentanyl and get away with it. It wasn't even listed as a Schedule I drug. Isn't that bizarre? But over the last 3 years, and since Sean and Danielle died, which was actually it was 4 years in July that they died. Those laws have changed because I worked with lots of different people. I worked with the Sheriff's Association because they were a part, of trying to change some laws too and get harsher penalties. And so now, we do have some penalties in place that law enforcement can use when they're arresting people. And people like April and myself, we're trying to get Washington, the president, to make fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction.
Okay.
When you think about, almost 1 million people have died over the last 20 years from opioids.
Wow.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
That's not just from fentanyl, but the last 3 years of fentanyl deaths have been, just unbelievable, over 300,000. And so people ought to take notice. But you know what I've found is that people, until it affects your family,
I was just thinking that.
like, I've never had a problem with drug addiction, and unless you have a child that does, or unless you yourself have struggled as an addict and you realize that this is real, like fentanyl can, just these dealers peddle gummy worms. They look like an actual gummy worm. They're colored. They're
Candy.
like candy.
Unbelievable.
So unless you have a child that battles addiction, or unless you've lost someone to fentanyl, it's almost like we live in, like me, I lived in this little bubble, in church my whole life. Like, this will never come into our family. Like, we serve God and my kids go to Christian schools, but it affected my family. I lost 3 of my 6 kids have died because of drugs. The other 3 have never, used drugs or anything like that. But it's just like, the danger lurks because the enemy knows that it's a way to lure people. It's a way to lure them away from God. It's a stronghold. Addiction is a stronghold.
Right.
And this world is filled with people that don't have hope. And they use drugs, and they use sex, and they use, pornography, and they use gambling, and they use, all of these different things to fill these voids inside of them, right?
Right.
This world is hungry for Christ.
Yes.
And we have to be the ones to show them Jesus through our own lives.
Right.
That's how people see that he's real. When they see that, oh my gosh, you walk through this and you're still standing. I have people that reach out to me that, some people tell me they haven't left their house in 2 years.
Wow.
They're so depressed. And I know what that feels like because I went through that depression when I lost John and Matt. The Lord allowed me to, I believe, to go through that. And I know what that feels like. And that is just an oppression. It's from the enemy too.
That's right.
Um, and so, yeah, we have people all around us. You know, you stand in the grocery store in a line, and I'm telling you, somebody in that line has been affected by drugs and their family,
Wow.
or they know somebody.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That's sometimes we think of the missions field as, you got to go to another country, but your local grocery store is a mission field. There's
Our
hurting souls
spheres of
there.
influence
Yeah,
at work.
exactly. Everywhere that you're at, work, school, grocery store, in your local community, there's hurting hearts everywhere. And you said something so important regarding the world. This world is hungry. They're looking for an answer. They're looking for the answer. And Jesus Christ is the only answer. He can
Yes.
change a heart. He can change, let me change that. He can change any heart, any life. It doesn't matter the circumstance, who the person is, what they've done. God's love for mankind is wrapped up in one thing. When He sent His Son, Jesus Christ, to die on that cross, to redeem mankind, that's the love of God.
Yes.
We don't understand it all now because we're not God. And that's why we can't give the answer, because He's the only one who knows all the reasons.
Yes.
And we'll understand it better by and by.
Yes.
But that's where faith comes in.
I know.
Faith is not about us. It's about the one in whom we've trusted and believed. I think that's your story. And all I've heard undertones of this whole time is it's not been you.
It's not.
The Lord has kept you.
If I could, I mean, it would take me too long to tell you all the stories, but one stuck out in particular, a lady from another country, and I don't even remember the country because I didn't even recognize the name of it. It was very unusual. And she said, I don't want to hear about your God and blankety blank your God. Just, and I get some of those kinds of responses.
Sure.
He took my 15-year-old son. That was my only child. Like, I was raised in a monastery, and I grew up about, believing in God and trusting in God. And how dare God do this? Like, how could He do this? He's not even real. Like, I don't even believe in it. It was just a joke. It was just, and it broke my heart.
Yeah.
It broke my heart. And I told her, I said, I just began to just minister. I didn't hit back with anything, but just love. I just began to love on her. You're just hurt. You're just angry. You're right where I was when I lost Matt and John. God understands your anger. He understands how we don't understand. And I just kept telling her, you've got to turn back to Him. And she said, no, I'll never turn back to Him. And just on and on. And I don't ever want to hear that name again. And then she texted me again. And so I'd send her this whole thing, and she'd say, I don't want to hear about God. But yet she kept reaching out to me.
She kept reaching out to you.
And so those are the kinds of stories that I see. I see seeds being sown. One of the things that Sean did before he died is he filled notebook after notebook with sermons. And he would come and bring me this notebook and say, Mom, read the sermon. One day I'm going to preach this. And I'd read it and just, Sean, I believe his dream was to one day preach those sermons. And what he couldn't have imagined, and I couldn't have imagined the day he told me he was going to go to Bible college, the last time I spoke to him, was that, oh, you're going to preach, but it's going to be in your death. It's not going to be in your life. Because that video that I sent you of him saying, let me tell you something about this color purple. This color purple is royalty. He loved the Lord with all his heart. And in his death, he's planting seeds and he's watering other seeds. And people are coming to know Christ. I have people that reach out to me and say, I'm alive because of your writings. And I'm just like, what? No, you're alive because of the Spirit of God. His breath on my writings. It's not me. Like, it's God. But see, that's what God does. When we yield our wounds to Him and our stories to Him, He bursts the most beautiful things through them for His glory, because it's about Him.
It's
right.
about glorifying Him.
That's right.
It's not about glorifying me or glorifying Sean. It's about glorifying God. And
That's right.
people need to hear about God.
That's right. That's right.
Because as Max Davis says, and he's a writer, he's written a lot of books, and he's my friend who's helping me on my manuscript. He says hope is a person, Jesus.
Amen.
And hope is a person.
That's it. That's it. Jesus said, "If I be lifted up, I will draw all men unto me." And that's what we must do, is lift him up. If anybody wants to follow you or get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Just on Facebook. Right now, just Pamela Riviere Rivas.
Okay.
That's how I am on Facebook. Pamela, my maiden name, Riviere, and then Rivas.
Okay.
So,
So they can just find you on social media, Facebook.
yeah.
And are you always working on new content to post, or?
I am.
Good.
I do. I try to post, pretty regularly. I've got, a lot of people that are, um, and that's the reason why I feel like the Lord called me to write a book, because people always ask me, what does that mean? Like Jesus. And so I told the Lord, I'll write the book, but it has to be about you more than about my story, like about how to heal.
Right.
And so some of my posts, I share a little, I'll pull like a paragraph or a sentence or two out of my manuscript,
Okay.
and I'll do like a devotional kind of posting about it. And I just pray over it. Lord, it's your light. Your spirit is what brings and births life. It's not me. It's not, but that's my goal, is that, lives are touched for Christ, that people come back to Him that have wandered away, that people come to know Him who have never known Him.
Yeah.
And, I've ministered to people who have told me, who couldn't get out of bed and didn't want to eat, and that have gone to counselors for years, and they're still in that same deep, dark place. And I tell them that, God uses counselors. That's a good thing. If I'd finished my master's, that's what I would be. I wanted to be a counselor, but I never finished my master's. So counselors are good, but the mighty counselor.
That's it. Wonderful, mighty counsel.
Yes,
That's it.
there's one counselor whose wisdom supersedes man's wisdom.
That's right.
And whose spirit is life.
That's
He
right.
is the way, the truth, and the life.
That's it.
And so that's what I want to give to people.
As we're wrapping it up, this has been incredible for me. I just thank you for being here. It's so easy to be saved, to be right with God. All you have to do is accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. That's it. It's not pointing a person to a church or denomination or religion. It's none of that. It's a personal relationship. And it's so easy. All a person has to do, and again, it doesn't matter who they are, rich, poor, black, white, polka dot, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they've never used drugs or they're using them currently at the moment, in the moment.
Right.
Anyone, anywhere, at any time, whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord shall be saved. It's that simple.
So beautiful.
And that's the beautiful, simple message that you are preaching and you're counseling and you're giving. It's the gospel. Just whosoever shall call on the name of the Lord, and we're talking about the Lord Jesus Christ, will be saved. And that's the message that the evil one, Satan, and he's real.
He's
a
alive.
thief who comes before to kill, steal, and destroy. He's a roaring lion, and he's looking to destroy. He hates the souls of men and women.
Yes.
And you're right, he's the one ultimately that's behind
Yes.
the evil, the wickedness. He doesn't want people to hear about this. He doesn't want people to hear your story.
He doesn't.
Because it glorifies Christ. And it shows the grace, the mercy of God. But the devil is also a defeated foe.
He is.
And he's destroying lives, but at the same time, the moment that someone says yes to Christ, their life is totally changed. And eternity awaits them. So you keep preaching, keep proclaiming, keep sharing, please.
I will.
And
Till my
keep
last
writing.
breath.
That's it. Keep doing what God has called you to do, this opportunity. and we're going to be praying with you and for
Thank you. I appreciate you, Josh.
Thank you for just being so open, transparent. I mean, the Lord heals the wounds and can take the sting out, but at the same time, going back through all of this, it's like going back there and digging through those wounds again. Thank you for doing that for
You're
me,
welcome. Thank you
for
for
us.
listening.
And if you would, as we close out, would you lead us in just a word of prayer, if I could impose?
Yes.
Please do.
Heavenly Father, I have no words, Lord, to thank you for all that you brought me through and all that you brought every one of your children through, God. I thank you, Father, that you are able to take the scripts that the enemy has used against us to try to destroy us and to kill us, Lord, and you flip those scripts and you bring a beautiful and glorious testimony that points to your son Jesus and to what he can do and what he does, what his blood can do, God. And I just thank you, Father, that when we feel like we're at the end of our rope and we feel like whatever life has handed us is too much for us to bear, that all we have to do is cry out to you.
Yes.
And you're there. You meet us right where we are, God, in the pit of depression, in the pit of despair. You meet us there, God, because you love us and you sent your son Jesus to show us that love on the cross. And Father, I just pray, God, that you would bless Josh and his family and Craig and Jessica. And I just pray, Father, that this message would go out, that it would shine glory upon your name, that you would be glorified, Father, in everything that we've shared today. And I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
And as we go out, the last thing I'm going to ask you to do is this, and I want you to do it at a slow pace. I want you to take us out by saying the names of your 3 children that are now in glory. I want you to share those names, their full names, with us one more time, and the dates that each of them went on to glory. And I want you to please take us out with that. Thank you, Pam.
Okay, Matthew Stephen McAllister, March the 6th, 2006. Danielle Marie McAllister, July the 3rd, 2021. Sean David Rivas, July 22nd, 2021.
What is up, guys? Beautiful morning, or should I say afternoon. I'm covered head to toe in purple. LSU, go Tigers. But I want to tell you something about this color, purple. Purple is royalty. And it says in the Bible that we are all children of God and we are royalty. So the point of this is we are supposed to be in heaven. We are meant to be in heaven. As long as we ask God and ask Jesus to come into our heart and be our Lord and Savior, our kingdom is up there waiting for us. So just remember this, guys. Always pray, always try to, repent of your sins. But most importantly, ask God to be your Lord and Savior, and your kingdom is waiting for you. All right, guys, have a great day. God bless you.